The Great Hall of Mooncrest Castle had not held all 6 Alpha Kings under one roof in nearly 40 years. Tonight it did. 6 thrones stood in a wide circle, each carved from the stone of a different territory, each holding a king whose word was law in his own land. Between them, on a cold floor lit by torches, stood a single woman in plain gray clothes. Her name was Ren, and she was an Omega, the lowest rank in werewolf society, a rank most people believed had no voice at all. Ren had been brought here in chains, though the chains had been removed before she entered the hall. The guards said it was tradition. Ren knew it was something else. They wanted her to look calm when she stood before the kings, even if her wrists still carried the marks of rope. She had been found 3 weeks earlier in the borderlands between 2 kingdoms, alone and starving, with a mark on her shoulder that no one in living memory had seen on a living person. The healers who examined her grew quiet when they saw it. Within days, word had spread to every kingdom. An Omega had been found with the old bloodline mark, the one tied to the First Pact, the ancient agreement that had created the laws of the werewolf world centuries ago. 6 kings, 6 kingdoms, 1 woman whose blood apparently mattered more than any of them wanted to admit. King Ardal of the Northern Reach was the first to speak. He was the oldest of the 6, his beard streaked with gray, his voice rough from decades of command. "We are here to decide where she belongs," he said, looking not at Ren, but at the other kings. "Her bloodline is rare. Whichever kingdom claims her gains an advantage the others do not have." "An advantage," King Bastion of the Eastern Hollow repeated, his tone flat. He was younger than Ardal, sharp-eyed, known for keeping his territory through clever deals rather than open conflict. "You make her sound like a weapon." "She is a resource," Ardal said simply. Ren, who had been silent until now, felt something cold settle in her chest. She had spent her whole life being told what she was, too weak to fight, too plain to matter, too low in rank to be heard. She had accepted it for a long time, because there had been no other choice. But something about hearing herself called a resource, in a room full of men deciding her future, without once asking what she wanted, lit a small, steady fire inside her. "I am not a resource," she said. The hall went silent. No Omega spoke uninvited in front of 1 Alpha King, let alone 6. Several of the guards along the walls shifted, unsure whether to step forward. King Ardal's eyebrows rose, more in surprise than anger. "You misunderstand your place," he said, not unkindly, the way someone might correct a child. "I understand my place perfectly," Ren answered. "I am the only person in this hall who has read the First Pact in full, not the parts that are convenient to remember." She lifted her chin. "There is a clause in it, one that has not been used in 300 years, because the kings who came before you decided it was safer forgotten. King Soren of the Western Cliffs, a quiet man who rarely spoke first, leaned forward slightly. What clause?" Ren took a breath. This was the moment everything could change, or the moment everything could end badly for her. She chose to continue anyway. "The pact says that an Omega bearing the original bloodline mark cannot be claimed by force or by council decision. She may only be claimed through the trial of 6, a series of tests, one set by each Alpha King, designed to prove not strength, but the values the pact itself was built upon. If she completes the trials, she is not given to any kingdom. She chooses her own path, and the kings are bound to honor that choice." For a long moment, no one in the hall moved. Then King Ardal laughed, low and humorless. "A fairy tale for Omegas who wish they had power." "Then prove me wrong," Ren said. "Read the pact yourselves. It is still in the Northern Archive, sealed but not destroyed. If I am lying, you lose nothing by checking. If I am telling the truth, you have no right to claim me without it." It was King Bastion who finally called for the old scrolls. 2 hours later, under torchlight, the pact was read aloud by the castle's eldest scholar, word for word, clause by clause, until they reached the section Ren had described. It was there, exactly as she had said. The kings exchanged looks that ranged from disbelief to quiet anger. They had built 3 centuries of tradition on the idea that Omegas had no claim to choice. Now a forgotten clause threatened to unravel that idea in front of all 6 kingdoms at once. King Ardal wanted to dismiss it outright. King Bastian pointed out that refusing to honor a clause within their own founding law would weaken every king's authority, not just the question of one Omega. In the end, pride and law together left them no real choice. If they ignored the pact for Ren, any kingdom could later ignore it for any reason. So, with visible reluctance, the 6 kings agreed. The trial of 6 would begin at dawn. The first trial belonged to King Ardal, and he chose the test of restraint. He believed an Omega could never master self-control under pressure, since Omegas were taught from birth to submit, not to choose. He placed Ren in a room with food after 3 days of fasting, told her she could eat freely, but warned that anything she did not finish would be given to a litter of starving pups in the courtyard below. Ren ate only enough to keep her strength, leaving the rest untouched, even as hunger gnawed at her. When Ardal saw the pups fed well that evening, his expression shifted from doubt to something closer to respect. The second trial belonged to King Bastian, who tested truth. He brought forward 3 witnesses, each telling a different story about an incident from Ren's past. Her time as a servant in a minor pack, where she had once been blamed for a theft she did not commit. 2 witnesses lied to protect themselves. Ren was asked to identify the truthful account without revealing how she knew. She listened carefully to small details. A torn sleeve mentioned that should not have existed, a time of day that didn't match the moonrise, and named the truthful witness correctly. Bastian did not smile, but he nodded once, which from him was rare praise. The third trial, set by King Soren of the Western Cliffs, tested mercy. He brought forward a young wolf who had broken pack law by stealing supplies to feed his sick sister. Tradition demanded punishment. Soren asked Ren to decide the outcome. She could have followed the easy path and called for harsh punishment to prove she respected law, or she could have shown weakness by ignoring the offense entirely. Instead, she suggested the boy work off the debt by serving the kingdom's healers, where his sister could also receive care. It satisfied the law without crushing the boy who had broken it. Soren, who had lost his own sister to illness many years before, said nothing, but something in his eyes softened. The fourth trial came from King Alara. Yes, a queen by blood, but addressed by the old title of king by tradition in her territory, of the Southern Marsh, who tested defiance. She wanted to see whether Ren would stand against her even when afraid. Alara ordered Ren to publicly disagree with one of her own kingdom's laws, a controversial rule that limited Omega movement between territories without a Alpha's permission. To criticize a king's law in her own hall was dangerous, and Ren knew it. Still, she spoke calmly and clearly, explaining why the law caused more harm than safety, citing real cases of separated families. Alara listened to the entire argument without interrupting, and at the end, admitted, quietly, to her advisors only, that the law needed revision. The fifth trial, set by King Tobias of the Iron Peaks, tested sacrifice. He told Ren that to pass, she would need to give up something valuable to her, not an object, but a chance. He offered her the opportunity to learn the location of her birth family, information she had wanted her entire life, in exchange for forfeiting the trial and walking away as the kingdom's chosen, no further tests required. It would have been the easiest, quickest path to a safe and comfortable life. Ren sat with the offer for a long moment before declining it. She told Tobias that her past mattered to her, but her future mattered more, and she would not trade her freedom of choice for an easier road. Tobias, a man not known for warmth, told his advisors afterward that he had not expected an Omega to refuse comfort for principle. The sixth and final trial belonged to King Caius of the Deepwood, considered the harshest of the 6. His test was unity, though no one understood at first what that meant. On the night before the final trial, word reached the castle of strange movement near the borders. Armed groups, not wolves, moving in the dark with unclear purpose. Caius initially dismissed the reports as rumor meant to delay the trial. Ren did not dismiss them. She had grown up near borderlands and recognized the careful, coordinated movement described by the scouts as something far more organized than bandits. She went to each king personally, even those who had shown her little warmth, and asked them to set aside their pride long enough to listen. Most refused at first. 6 kings who barely tolerated each other in peace were not eager to share information out of caution for an unproven threat. But Ren reminded them of something simple. The entire reason the original pact had been written was unity between kingdoms, after a time when division had nearly destroyed them all. If they could not trust each other now, the pact they all claimed to honor meant nothing. Slowly, reluctantly, the kings agreed to compare what their separate scouts had observed. When the reports were laid side by side, a pattern emerged that no single kingdom could have seen alone. A coordinated plan to strike during the very gathering, meant to keep the peace, using the council itself as a moment when all 6 kings, distracted and divided, would be vulnerable at once. Because the kings listened in time, they were able to strengthen the castle's defenses and warn their border guards before the threat could reach the hall. The danger passed without harm to anyone inside Mooncrest Castle, but the lesson was not lost on the 6 rulers, who had nearly let pride cost them everything. When the sun rose the next morning, the trial of 6 was declared complete. Ren had passed every test, not through strength or submission, but through the very values the pact had always claimed to protect. According to the old law, she could now choose her own path, free from any king's claim. The hall waited to hear which kingdom she would select. Ren surprised them all again. She did not choose a kingdom. Instead, she asked the 6 kings to create a new position, one that did not exist in any of their territories. A warden of the pact, someone who would serve no single kingdom, but would hold all 6 accountable to the laws they claimed to honor. It was a role with no precedent and no clear power structure, and several kings hesitated to agree to something so undefined. But Bastian, ever the strategist, pointed out that having one trusted voice to settle disputes between kingdoms might prevent exactly the kind of division that had nearly cost them everything the night before. Soren agreed, remembering the mercy she had shown the young thief. One by one, the others followed, some out of genuine respect, others simply because refusing now would look like exactly the kind of pride that had nearly gotten them killed. And so, an Omega, who had once been dragged into Mooncrest Castle in chains, walked out as something the werewolf world had never had before. Not a queen, not a prize, but a warden, bound to no single throne, and answerable to all 6 at once. Word of what happened in Mooncrest Castle spread quickly across every territory. Some called Ren the beginning of a fairer world, where rank no longer decided a person's worth. Others called her dangerous, a sign that the old order was crumbling, and no one yet knew what would replace it. Ren herself did not concern herself much with what others called her. She had spent her whole life being told what she was not allowed to be. Now, for the first time, she got to decide for herself, and that, more than any title, was the change that mattered most.